ton about my content that I post on the web, I think people did overreact somewhat. So that's a fun Twitter account if you want to check it out.
That is really good. I love it. I love it. That's funny. Instagram TOS on Twitter. I wish that there was some place, because the parody accounts, they have such a short shelf life, right?
Oh, they do.
They're great in, times of crisis and, when there's, some sort of a meme that you can piggyback off of. And it's like, I want all the parody accounts to go into some parody account receptacle. Maybe what I should do is I should just make a Twitter list and be proactive and do it myself. That's actually a really good idea. All the parody accounts, and then, you can check back with them every so often.
There's always so many, though, Sarah.
There is. So it turns out that Google had acquired Meebo some time ago. And Amber, I don't know how familiar you are with Meebo. I've only ever seen Meebo as sort of that little bar that shows up at the bottom of certain websites and kind of just looks annoying. But Google had acquired Meebo, and no one really knew what Google was going to do with it. However, a post on thenextweb.com has a screenshot. If you scroll down a little bit, Alex, you'll see it there. It was a post on Google Plus that showed the Meebo bar in action. The Meebo bar, by the way, I mean, I'm not the only the person who didn't think much of the Meebo bar, just because it's one of those things that, it takes up space on the bottom of your page and just kind of distracts you. But it was a good way for advertisers to be tracking engagement and that sort of thing. Obviously, that's something that Google's interested in. Amber, you and I aren't the hugest Google Plus users, but do you think that for those who are, this is going to be a setback? Google Plus is pretty nice and clean as it is.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be a setback. At least my feeling about people who are using Google Plus, the really active users, is that they love it so much. I mean, I think they're very loyal to that platform. So I don't think this is going to be a huge issue for them. So like I said, I just like you, I'm not as familiar with Meebo, but I don't think there's a huge drawback here. I think there'll be some acceptance in the Google Plus community. Hopefully. I think they're willing to try new things, maybe to get more people. I don't know.
Yeah, Google Plus also released, in the vein of what's new at Google Plus, released some stuff, Google Plus communities, that they also have some stats. 500 million registered users, over 500 million registered users. And Google says of those 500 million registered users, 235 million actively are using features. So they're plus one-ing things or they're, this also includes Gmail. So it's sort of like, well, okay, I guess you could say that you're logged in. Yeah, I use Gmail a million times a day, and I'm in my Google Plus account sometimes, but certainly a small fraction of that. So Google has some very impressive numbers, but if you're counting Gmail, I think that's a little bit skewed. You're not necessarily using Google Plus as a social network.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally agree. Now, Sarah, speaking of social, of course, like we always do on the show, this is of particular interest to me and probably to you, Sarah, since you worked in the TV industry for a while. The fact that Nielsen and Twitter have just come together to establish social TV ratings. So this has been something I think people have been thinking about for a really long time, because so many people rely on talking about social or talking about television via social media sites when they're watching TV. So now something to actually measure all of that chatter. So it makes perfect sense to me. I think being able to measure that is such a great thing. And I've always been a little bit skeptical of Nielsen TV ratings as far as how they do them. And I think we had a conversation in San Francisco about this.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Nielsen ratings are, they are such a... It's sort of baffling that that's still the way that we're actually tracking who's watching shows, because... it's complicated. We don't have to get into all that Nielsen stuff, but it is really not a very accurate sample size, the way that Nielsen works. But that's the way that it's always been done. And I think it is really interesting that, especially this year has been a very interesting year for things like spikes in ratings and Take the U.S. presidential elections. Is always just that's an easy example because so many people were watching debates, for example, and talking about it on Twitter. And so you see, Twitter will roll out these statistics like, oh, we had 8 million tweets per second. I'm making that up. When the Obama Romney speech or debate number 2 type of a thing, and it's that sort of like, okay, well, that's interesting, but what do we do with that? What can we make out of these sorts of statistics that Twitter's like, people are clearly watching and they're talking about it and they're engaged? And I mean, this is the best proof that you have. It's very smart for Nielsen to sort of piggyback on all this data, because what else is it besides kind of a cool novelty? Hey, Twitter hit a milestone, that kind of thing. This can actually really, really help the people who are in the business of knowing what we're all doing and what we're all watching, know specifically not only what we're watching, but what we think about it. Are we excited? Are we sad? Are we, watching with a group of friends? All of that is really valuable.
I think this is really going to change the television game too for many people who are producing TV, who maybe haven't really thought much about what's happening in the social media space as far as conversations. And I was reading today, I think it's Amazon who is putting out or producing a few different pilots, comedy pilots that an audience online will be able to submit what they think of each of these shows. And the show that gets the most feedback in a positive way will be the show that actually will end up being produced. So we see, I think, how television programming is going. And I think that the social experience is becoming such a big part of that. So right now, shows that maybe, maybe a lot of people watch, or they think a lot of people watch, maybe those shows won't be around anymore because the social media experience will be so important. Because I'm thinking of shows in the past, Sarah, that have been canceled, and yet online they have this huge following. You can imagine that these ratings will skew the audience, what the audience thinks a little bit in a positive way, I think.
Yeah, anything to get sort of more accuracy is good for us, and it's good for the people who look at these numbers and continue shows or cancel them based on these numbers. All right, let's move on to a little Facebook news. Facebook Nearby is it's live, and it was sort of a slow rollout, but this is a Foursquare competitor, really. It's sort of you could say that Foursquare is already a Yelp competitor, but this is Facebook's way of saying, okay, well, you can already check into a location on Facebook. You've had the ability to do that for a long time. I remember back in the day when Facebook rolled that out, everyone said, well, Foursquare is dead because Facebook has all the users, and now that you can just check in on Facebook, who would want to use anything else? Well, Foursquare certainly isn't dead, and Foursquare has sort of evolved as a company that you can still check into places, and see where your friends are. But it's a lot more of a discovery tool. In fact, the latest update has really, made big changes to that. Where if you hit the Explore button when you're out and about, you get all sorts of recommendations based on what's nearby, tips that people have left about a cool cafe, or the best table at a library, and all sorts of stuff. Some of that would be from friends, some of that would be from strangers. Looks like Facebook, because they love doing this, has replicated that functionality, and they'd like you to do the same thing on Facebook. So instead of, if you were just at a particular location, or you want to check in somewhere, previously Facebook would geolocate you and then give you a list of places that you might be. You look like you're on 140 Keller Street, or you at the Twit Brick House, that's the venue, that sort of thing. And now it'll be more of I would have the option to do that, but I'd also see different places rise up in the list depending on things that my friends liked, places that maybe they were. It's all kind of the influence of likes and activities from people that I'm connected to on Facebook. So a little bit more of like, here's an intelligent suggestion of a place you might want to be or something that you might want to do based on where you are. I
like this.
I do too, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, as you know, I've mentioned this before, but I'm not one who checks in all the time. And so the idea of doing that on Facebook never overly appealed to me, but I could see using this. And just based on the review on TechCrunch, it seems like it works pretty well. Obviously, they're going to be getting more information over time, but having that contextual information of wherever I am at any point, I think is really helpful if I'm in a new town or a new city. And and it recommends things based on what it sees that I'm posting on Facebook and what my friends are posting. I think the information is really valuable. So it makes a lot of sense. It reminds me a little bit, although I know it's somewhat different, but I know Google has a field trip app that does similar things, but it also uses augmented reality in an interesting way. But I think these services are really exciting. Just being able to get kind of a layer of information around your geographic location that's useful with recommendations and all those other things.
Yeah, I was just traveling recently, and I was out of the country, and I was in Paris, which is obviously a big city, lots of stuff to do, and I'm certainly no expert. And I was using the Foursquare Explorer feature all the time. It wasn't always it didn't always give me all of the information I wanted. You know, sometimes I'd get a recommendation and I'd be like, that doesn't seem like a place that I would like. So it's not perfect, but it's very, very helpful, to get suggestions, especially when you're kind of just trying to get over the feeling of being overwhelmed or having too many choices. Facebook's great because, again, it just has so much data on the things not only that I like and I do, but my friends, and I'm obviously likely to want to do the same kinds of things that my friends want to do, or maybe they've left a tip or that sort of thing. I think what remains to be seen is this is probably just a great feature for Facebook to have. Why not offer this? But will it take any users from Foursquare? I don't really feel like Foursquare took much of a dent from Facebook rolling out location services. So I don't know. I think maybe it's just sort of a lot of companies realize that we want this, so they're all offering similar stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is just the future of social networks, to be able to have this type of information built in there. So I don't think it's going to take a ton of users away from Foursquare at all. I think instead what it will do with people like me who maybe don't use Foursquare all the time but use Facebook is that it will attract us to be able to use a service like that, and then maybe eventually we'll start checking in. So I think that's how they'll be able to capture a larger audience, by people who are already existing Facebook users.
It's interesting how there are the people who, and I think I'm kind of one of these people, it's like I like to use Foursquare for my check-ins and Facebook for my messaging and certain updates, and then there's another like photo site that I use for this or that. It's like I could do all of those things with Facebook, and obviously Facebook wants to be just the network that does it all, and that's great because it does a lot of your work for you. And then some people like to compartmentalize.
But don't you think, Sarah, I kind of think that a lot of people like to have different communities. And I think that's one of the things that attracts me about everything from Path to Instagram to Twitter to Facebook. As much as there's overlap between people that I know that are on multiple networks in terms of the ones I've just mentioned, but I think there's also a different feel and a different community all the time. And I would see or imagine it's the same thing with Foursquare. It's just a different experience, different community, and it's nice to have that separation. So I'm with you on compartmentalizing all of this.
Yeah, me too. I just don't want to put it all in one network.
No.
Facebook could be gone tomorrow.
It's like eating a peanut butter and jam sandwich every single day, Sarah. You got to mix it up.
Got to mix it up. Can't have the same old friends, the same old community every day. Oh, who'd want it? Hey, quick reminder that we are recording this episode of The Social Hour at a special time, a little bit ahead of time, so we can take a little bit of time off for our Christmas week when this episode will air. But normally we do record the show live on Fridays, 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific, right here at twit.tv. Thanks to everybody who joins us live. It's fun to have you. I'm always watching chat to make sure that you keep us honest and chime in with feedback and suggestions on the topics that we're talking about. But if you can't watch live, not a problem. You just go to twit.tv/TSH. That's where you can keep up on each and every episode of this fabulous show. We have show notes in our individual episodes. So if you kind of want to look into one of the stories that Amber talked about or revisit something that we showed off, it's all there. We make sure that it's as easy as possible for you to keep up on the show. And you can subscribe to the show too, which is really the easiest way, because then you just get the show delivered to you as soon as we release it. As soon as it gets encoded and pushed out to the internet, you get it and you download it. We don't even have to download it. And then you watch it however you want to watch it. I watch it via my Apple TV, but that's just one of many, many ways that you can enjoy our fine programming here. All right, Amber, before we get to some of our tips and spotlights and even viewer feedback, let's take a moment to thank SAP for sponsoring this episode of The Social Hour. It's such a good little match. And, Amber and I are actually going to be on an SAP podcast in, is it 2 weeks from today?
I think January 2nd. I'm not sure if it's live or not, but I think it's January 2nd, if I'm right.
Yeah, it's like a social media business show that SAP puts together. But, that's neither here nor there. I'll remind you guys when it gets a little bit closer to the show and tweet out the links. But SAP is just a perfect partner for us because it's all about companies engaging with their customers and their users via social media. I mean, that is a huge issue for a lot of companies. When you're big enough, you're going to get a lot of feedback and you get people talking about you, and you have to stay on top of that. Are people talking about you on Facebook, or are they tweeting, links or bad experiences, or good experiences? Are they blogging about your company? You have to make sure that you're listening and are able to react. So SAP has a little fantastic service called Social Media Solutions that does exactly that. This is for corporations and enterprise that helps you listen to your users. So you can get reports on conversations, relevant terms, so you can make sure that there are certain terms that are flagged, and you always get when somebody has those terms online, and patterns, and you can even follow your competitors. That's important too, especially if you're big business. You got to know what the other guys are doing, and are people more excited about that? It gives you a sense of the intensity of anger. If somebody's really angry about something, and it's like, this is a really good person to reach out to, give a little customer service to. All of that is built in. Also helps you identify customers who are ready to buy. If you're in the business of selling customer stuff, any good salesperson knows that there are some key traits of somebody who is ready to buy, and that's the point where you be as helpful as possible. SAP uses something called natural language processing. This is the kind of stuff that allows robots basically to understand emotion. So if somebody says something, there's sort of like what is it? Sarcasm? Are they happy? Are they not happy? That all needs to be taken into consideration. Then, of course, you've listened, you've got all your information, and then you have to engage. So SAP improves customer support because you can set rules about who's getting what message. If you've got a team of people, everybody might be in charge of something. So, I might not be in charge of the tech support part of someone's complaint, but I know who is, and it shouldn't even go through me. It should go through the tech support person. So it's intelligent message routing. You can think of it that way. Somebody tweets about some sort of social media question, for example, and you're the social media person, then you know to get right back to them. Social Media Solutions from SAP is accurate, real time, which is obviously very important in this day and age, understanding of brands' social media performance. How are you doing? That's what Social Media Solutions from SAP wants to let you know. So if you manage social media presence, and many of you do, you write us all the time, for a large regional or a national enterprise, you should definitely get in touch with SAP. How do you do that, you say? sap.com/twit. Easy as pie. You can learn a lot more about social media solutions, and if it is the answer for your company to get on top of that social media engagement. Okay, Amber, let's move on to, speaking of social media marketing, we've got some interesting numbers.
Yeah, this is interesting for people who are listening in who manage some type of social media strategy or campaign for a company. You'll be happy to hear this particular stat. This was a survey that was done. There were thousands of people in Canada and the U.S. who were surveyed in April, May of this year. And based on the results, 45% of people on social networks say they have interacted with a brand through social media. I thought that was pretty significant, and definitely we've seen a pretty good rise here in terms of the number of people who are going out and liking brands' pages on Facebook and following brands on Twitter. The interesting thing I think about this study in the next sentence on this Mashable article, where they talk about how just 7% say that they followed a brand on Twitter, and 7% say they've posted feedback on a company's social networking profile. So there's not a ton of information here, Sarah, but at first glance, what I was thinking about is that for many brands, it seems like a lot of people would prefer to interact with them maybe on Facebook as far as having conversations. Twitter seems in some ways for me to just be more informational in terms of the brands that I follow, and I don't interact as much as I would maybe on a Facebook page. Also in this study, they talked a little bit about how users are actually buying from different brands across social media sites, and the numbers are quite low. It's going to take a while for those numbers to rise again, but I think pretty good news for people who are in the internet marketing space.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't interact with many brands on social media at all, Amber. I do. So there are certain brands that I'm certainly following on Facebook. But then Facebook, because it wants so badly, for the promoted ads in our news feed to work and make advertisers happy. I see so many brands that my friends have liked at the top of my news feed, and I'm constantly hiding them. And then once I've hidden it forever, then it's never going to show up. And I don't know. It's complicated. It's definitely complicated. But I do feel like Twitter it's certainly not my number one place to follow a brand, but there is a place for it. And I think that Facebook pages are probably one of the best examples of a good place, because you really can have conversations and multimedia and stay on top of it. And we've all seen the Facebook pages where you go, well, that's definitely a brand, but this is very well done, and they're obviously keeping it up to date, and it feels alive.
Yeah, you can just do so much more. And I think also we have to talk about the definition of the term brand, because when we say brand, sometimes you're thinking of those really large companies, maybe like Amazon or the Gap or whatever they might be. But I think some of the brands that I follow are actually smaller local businesses, and I do pay attention to what they're doing online. I follow them on Twitter, the tea shop down the street from my house, the local pub, all of these businesses, I do consider them to be brands. And I think in the local business market, I think that's very exciting, because I think we have more of a kind of a high touch experience with individuals in a community and those brands that perhaps they follow or a friend on Facebook. So some exciting opportunities there for more of a relationship. So I think that's a different way or different approach I think that a lot of people perhaps are taking.
Absolutely. We've got a spotlight of the week. I honestly just heard about this earlier today. Kitchenly. So it's kitchen.ly, and it has been called the Airbnb for restaurants. You go, okay, well, what? What does it mean? So if you look at, if you just on the homepage there that we're looking at, it says, who is Kitchenly for? Well, college students, for students that want to find a home-cooked meal at school or want to make some cash on the side, for foodies that love to cook and want to share their favorite recipes with the world, for private chefs that want to ply their trade, get feedback, make some money doing it, for restaurants that want to fill in empty reservations or promote a specialty dish. Okay, I kind of love this. That sounds pretty cool. Okay, so if I just search for, I'll search for a zip code in San Francisco. Sorry, but it looks like there are no hosts here. Well, that's disappointing. I mean, geez.
No kitchen like you, Sarah.
Yeah. Well, all right. Maybe another zip code. No. Well, shoot. I mean, how can there not be any in two different zip codes in San Francisco?
It's pretty new, though, right?
Yeah,
is it possible there just aren't any listings?
Yeah, or not a lot of them. Yeah, there's probably several more in the area where it came from. Let's see where they're based out of in the about area. So
anything?
All right, no, I don't actually see where they're at least not telling us where they're based. It probably doesn't matter so much. I don't know. I love the idea of a restaurant, particularly a restaurant, just because reservations can be such a hassle, and I love little technical reservation systems that help get you in somewhere, that might be busy or manage that. In fact, I just used OpenTable last night, and it was great. We walk right in at 7:30, and they're expecting us. But I don't know how much. I mean, would you go dine with a private chef because you had seen them on Kitchenly? I mean, there's so much.
Is it at their house? This is what I'm confused about.
Well, I think it depends. A restaurant could say.
I go to their house.
Yeah. Well, I think it's sort of like. I mean, it's excess inventory, right? I mean, that's all this is. I mean, it's the same thing that an airline does. or a hotel. This is sort of like, hey, there's food that I could sell to you. Are you interested? This is sort of like, and if you use the Airbnb comparison, it's a place that is a little bit more personal, that belongs to somebody. In this case, though, it's actually food. I don't know. It's interesting. You almost think like there could be health concerns.
Yeah, I think
because
so.
It's like with Airbnb, if somebody has, and I actually just stayed in an Airbnb in Paris last week, and there were a lot of things I liked about it, but there were a few things that I didn't like about it, and I can give feedback, and the host gets that, and Airbnb understands, what was good and bad about my stay. And that was kind of just like a roof over my head type of a thing. Food is a little bit different, and people are so particular about that sort of thing. I like the idea. I'm just not sure how much it's going to catch on, and clearly it's brand new or not catching on at all.
Well, first they need some cooks who are going to be hosts, and then maybe it will catch on a little bit. I don't know. It seems like a good idea, and I think that's because I like the way it's described as Airbnb for restaurants, and that's so catchy and kind of sexy right now in the social media world because everybody loves Airbnb. But from a practical standpoint, I don't see me as being someone who would use that. I don't know if there's anyone listening or watching who would use it. If they think that's interesting, please let us know, because maybe Sarah and I, pardon the pun, are totally out to lunch, and we're missing something here.
Yeah. Well, I've typed in San Francisco, New York, Los Angeles, and Toronto, and there are no kitchens. No kitchens at all. So maybe this is just some grand ruse.
Sarah, where did you find this service?
Who knows where I find anything? On Twitter, I think. Somebody said something about it. I'm not exactly sure.
It's hilarious.
It was, in my list of things where I go, oh, this is cool. We'll show it off live on the social hour. It's not much to see. It's more of just a concept.
Too funny. All right. Well, Sarah, I'm just going to back up in our rundown, just one line back to our social tip. And this might be a little bit more useful, especially for people who use Google+. And for anyone who uses Blogger. I used to use Blogger years and years ago. I do not use it at all anymore. But I know there are still people who depend on it and who use it on a regular basis to write blog posts. Well, now there is stronger Google+ integration into Blogger so that you can mention other users who are on Google+ in your blog posts. So a really simple thing to do once you're in the Blogger tool is to simply add the plus sign and the user's name, and then someone can link directly out to them. It's just a tighter way to integrate between the two services. I kind of wanted to mention this as a social tip, not that I'm going to use it necessarily, but we're seeing more and more of this, right, Sarah, with Google+, where they're trying to integrate in many different ways. So I think we have no choice but to start using Google+ again.
Yes, I agree. Well, they are really, really clever about making sure that it's easy to jump back, and that's good.
Exactly.
That's good, and obviously, if it's on Blogger, it makes perfect sense. I still sort of wonder, is Blogger going away? Obviously, there are a lot of people who still use Blogger as a blogging platform. Anytime you see a blogspot domain, but you can use your own domain as well and just have it hosted there. But it always it's felt for a long time as it's been sort of abandoned. It's there, it's fine, but it's not sort of new and exciting. And Google wouldn't keep it around. I mean, they'd fold it into Google Plus unless they felt that it was important enough to have, as a standalone blogging platform. So it's kind of nice to see whenever I see something that gets updated on Blogger, I kind of go like, oh, because Blogger was one of the first places that anybody could make a blog, back in the early days of blogs. So it's kind of a dinosaur that's now getting a little Google Plus treatment. So
I feel like we're going retro on the social hour. We're talking about Flickr and Blogger. I mean, how many years has it been? We've talked about MySpace over the past few weeks, and it's like we're going back to the past. These services are trying to have new life and have a second chance at gaining more popularity. Kind of interesting.
Yeah, the Flickr thing is kind of great. I mean, Amber, I have always loved Flickr. I really don't use Flickr all that often, but what I have done is, for the most part, I mean, I'm sure there are a few exceptions, but anytime I post a picture on Instagram, I just cross-post it to Flickr because I figure, well, why not? I mean, I'm taking a picture. I might as well just at least have it in Flickr somewhere. So when a lot of people were complaining about this whole Instagram thing, I thought to myself, well, I really haven't been using my point and shoot because I'm shooting, a bunch of iPhone pictures, and now, of course, they're cropped and they have Instagram filters on them, but I like the pictures. And I still feel like I've been active on Flickr. I'm just usually not going to the site, looking at my stats, commenting on other people's photos. And I love the idea of a Flickr comeback story. I really do, because there's never been anything wrong with Flickr. I didn't like the mobile app. The new mobile app is really, really nice.
It's beautiful. Yeah,
they're just late to the game, which is unfortunate. But it's one of those. It's kind of like the old Web 2.0 companies. Which is funny even to say that, but Flickr was one of the best. So it'd be really nice to see it flourish again.
Well, they're trying to reinvent themselves, right? We've seen this with Dig. We've seen it with Delicious in some sense over the years. But it's just like the ones that are trying to stay around have to reinvent themselves completely, hope that audiences stick with them. And we're just watching to see if they're going to survive or not. I do think that out of all of the services that we've mentioned, I think Flickr it has the best chance of being part of a lot of people's lives again, as far as them using it on a regular basis, just because of their mobile strategy. I mean, we can't deny how much people depend on phones for taking pictures and saving those pictures. So I think that's going to be, 2013. I think they'll have a pretty good year.
Yeah, absolutely. Another service that I was walking through the internet and I found it somewhere is I know actually this was an email that we got from a service called Rebutter, I guess is how you would pronounce it. It's rbutr.com. Talk about a Web 2.0 name if I ever heard one. And what this is a service. Right now, it's just a Chrome plugin if you use the Chrome browser. A service that alerts you to articles that may be a rebuttal to another article. So, if you're reading some sort of an opinion piece on Instagram, the whole Instagram terms of service are evil and you should shut down your account immediately might be one side of the story. Well, there might be a really interesting other side of the story. And of course, in that case, there were many on both sides. There were all sorts of articles. But sometimes, you read an opinion piece and it's like, okay, that's opinionated, and you might think, well, I'm very swayed by the points that this person made. And it's very helpful to have a little handy plugin that helps you jump over to a related article that is a rebuttal. And the idea behind the service, which is still in beta, is that it would be not only able to jump you back and forth, but to discern, what's the source and then what's the rebuttal, the follow-up. And that's pretty cool. I went ahead and installed it, and I've kind of trying to get rebuttals based on this is stuff that's not really all that controversial. If I go ahead and click my rebuttal here, this is submit a request to the Rebutter community to find rebuttals to this page. So what this is it's a sort of a joint effort. There's crowdsourcing information, so I could help direct people to a rebuttal page, or I could get that information, if I was a third party. So it's just kind of an interesting idea.
Yeah, that's really cool. It's funny. I'm just reading the article on pointer.org about this particular plugin, and it looks like they've been doing pretty well. They recently won a prize for a top 10 startup that could change the face of news. I think this could be really interesting in the news space, and just gives people a different opinion on whatever they're reading. And a lot of what's out there on the internet, of course, is not necessarily true or accurate or factual. So anything I think that tries to bring people bring the masses closer to what's fact versus fiction is a great thing, and it seems like this does that. So this is fun. I've never heard of this, Sarah.
Yeah, it's neat. In fact, I'm looking at a list of they've got a recent rebuttals page, which sort of gives you an idea of who's using this and how does it work well. There is a Telegraph versus Guardian post that has to do with violent crime and sort of what to do about that in Europe. There is, here's that Instagram story. Here's CNET News. This headline says, Instagram says it now has the right to sell your photos. The Verge article, which was written by Nilay Patel, who I mentioned earlier, headline is, no, Instagram can't sell your photos, what the new terms of service really mean, and so on. So that's a very good example of something where you just get two sides of the story. And sometimes it's really helpful to read them both because you get things put more in perspective.
Yeah, that's very cool. I love that. Okay, Sarah, another thing that maybe isn't as academic at all is this particular meme that's been going around the internet for a while. And in fact, this story originally took place, the real part of the story took place in Toronto, my hometown. And I'm not sure if you heard about the IKEA monkey. But this monkey has become.
I heard about it. All right.
Oh, yes. A very famous monkey. So there's a woman who lives in Toronto who, believe it or not, owned a monkey, even though it's not legal to do so. And she took the monkey to IKEA. The monkey got loose. It was running around the IKEA with this weird sweater jacket thing on. I don't know. It has a particular name, but I'm not really following the fashion of the monkey so much. And the story went everywhere. Well, I think what's even funnier are some of the memes that have been created. And in fact, based on this link that I've sent, there are like 30 different memes and images that have been created with the particular monkey front and center as the star of the Photoshop photos. So it's a ton of fun if you need a great laugh.
Oh, the little monkey with the little hat, or with the little.
What is that? The jacket?
Yeah, the jacket. I mean, he's so snug in there. What?
Yeah.
Oh, I love the one with the cat. Oh,
it's too funny. I know. So all the Photoshop pictures are absolutely hilarious. And like I said, there's no shortage of them. I started seeing these within a couple of days. I think there are various Twitter accounts that have been dedicated to the IKEA monkey. Unfortunately, the IKEA monkey is right now, I think that he's in, I don't want to say in captivity, but it's being held at Animal Services, I think, in Toronto somewhere.
Yes,
and
yeah.
Coming back to his owner.
I believe there's some concern as to what exactly happened. Oh, Hannibal monkey, poor little Hannibal. Oh gosh, that's great. Poor little IKEA monkey. Yeah, it's the whole thing is. I mean, I want the monkey to be safe, of course, but a little social network comic relief, absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that, the monkey is probably in good hands right now. And even though his, quote, mom misses him, I think he's probably safe now. And, he's not running around in IKEA. He could get hurt, right, Sarah? That could be a dangerous situation.
Well, I've always sort of thought that if you could figure out a way to hide in IKEA, it's like when they're closing stuff down, you hide under one of the beds where they can't see you. They must really sweep IKEA stores, because that people want to spend the night in an IKEA. Or maybe they just have a lot of security guards after hours.
I've never really thought of that before. Now you're really creeping me out, Sarah. That's a good point.
You know what I mean? I want to know. It's like it's sort of like that movie Mannequin, right? Where they're all stuck in the mall overnight.
Oh, yes.
And she comes to life. I've always sort of thought, does anyone have a great story about having spent the night in an IKEA? You could get some Swedish meatballs and snuggle up in your favorite bed.
Hot dogs.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because I'm sure all that stuff will just be open and available, right? If you could just make it past them turning off the lights. But that's just my little IKEA fantasy. I want to remind everybody.
There's still time, Sarah. There's still time.
It's true. Yeah, I could just drive to Emeryville right now and get comfortable and hope that they don't see me. They must pat down all the beds. There must be people who try to do that. Well, if you are one of them, please do write us. You can write us at thesocialhour@twit.tv. Don't have to write us about IKEA. You can write us about anything. Questions, comments, ideas, cool stuff for us to talk about and test out and share with the rest of the community. You can leave us a voicemail, 2626 SOCIAL. Just type in 2626 social. Got a couple of voicemails this week. Try to keep them to 30 seconds or less. That way we can roll them into the show. Anything a little bit longer than that, and it's hard to fit it into our